The compass needle quivered, then spun. The radio hissed, then cut to silence. A calm voice, too calm, broke through the static. Fuel is running low. Minutes later, 5 Navy planes were gone. The rescue mission that followed vanished too. No wreckage, no bodies, no answers. How does the ocean erase steel and bone so completely? And why here, always here, inside this stretch of sea we call the Bermuda Triangle? For centuries, this place has been painted as a graveyard of ships and planes, where reason falters and silence devours. To some it's a hoax, to others a legend. But to sailors, pilots, and researchers like myself, it is something stranger still, a mirror reflecting our oldest fear, the fear of the unknown. Tonight, on Chronicle of Secrets, we journey back into the heart of that mystery, half history, half myth, and entirely unforgettable. Picture this. You stand on the deck of a ship at night, the horizon endless, the sky heavy with stars. Somewhere between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico lies a stretch of ocean that has consumed more stories than any other. Today, we call it the Bermuda Triangle. But here's the twist. The name itself is new. You won't find it scribbled in the margins of Columbus's logbooks, nor on the naval charts of the 18th century. It was the invention of modern writers, an attempt to draw lines around scattered tragedies. And yet, long before it had a name, it already had a reputation. In 1492, Columbus recorded that his compass spun strangely in these waters. Historians tell us it was likely magnetic declination, a quirk of physics. But to sailors staring into an alien sky, thousands of miles from home, that trembling needle felt like something more. It was as if the ocean itself was whispering, "You are not in control here." That is the paradox of the Bermuda Triangle. On a map, it is ordinary. Warm seas, swift currents, scattered islands. But in the mind, it becomes extraordinary. It is not just geography, it is psychology. A place where the odds of accident meet the hunger for myth, where routine tragedy becomes legend, and where every wave seems capable of hiding something we were never meant to explain. So the real question is this: are we charting the ocean, or is the ocean charting us? December 5th, 1945. Florida's skies were flawless, the sea like polished glass. From the runway at Fort Lauderdale, 5 Navy Avenger bombers lifted into the air, engines steady, wings glinting in the sun. Their commander, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, had fought in the Pacific and survived. This was supposed to be easy. A 3-hour drill, drop practice torpedoes, turn back home. 2 hours later, the first radio crackled. Taylor's voice was strained. "My compass is out. Both of them." A silence followed, then confirmation from his men. Every cockpit faced the same impossible problem. The ocean was still calm, the skies still clear. Yet their instruments had turned traitor. Confusion spread. Some swore they saw the shallow islands of the Bahamas below. Taylor insisted they were over the Gulf of Mexico. Voices clashed through static, pilots second-guessing each other, their commander wrestling with doubt. For trained aviators, this was not just disorientation, it was terror in slow motion. Ground control pleaded with them. "Fly west, toward the setting sun. That's Florida." But Taylor steered them northeast. Circles turned into zigzags. Fuel bled away. By dusk, their words carried the weight of finality. "We may have to ditch. When the first plane runs dry, we all go down together." Then silence. The Navy scrambled a PBM Mariner rescue plane with 13 men aboard. 20 minutes later, sailors on a tanker saw a sudden bloom of fire against the night sky. The rescue was gone before it began. For 5 days, over 300 ships and aircraft scoured 300,000 square miles of ocean. They found nothing. No oil, no wreckage, not a single body. 18 aircraft and 30 men had simply evaporated. This is why Flight 19 became legend, not just because it was lost, but because it broke the rules of loss. Clear skies, experienced pilots, 2 vanishings in a single day. And above all, the ocean's refusal to return even a scrap of proof. So we are left with the most haunting question of all. If the Atlantic can erase them so completely, what else might it have already taken, without us ever knowing? Picture the USS Cyclops, half a football field longer than the Titanic's deck, a floating mountain of steel. She was the pride of the U.S. Navy's collier fleet, built to carry 10,000 tons of ore across oceans, built to withstand storms, built, as many sailors believed, to never sink. In March of 1918, she left Brazil heavy with manganese, bound for Baltimore. More than 300 men were aboard. The war in Europe still raged, but her route was safe, her mission routine. Then, somewhere between Barbados and the mainland, the Cyclops simply ceased to exist. No distress call, no SOS, no lifeboats, nothing. For a vessel that size to vanish without a trace was unthinkable. The Atlantic is vast, yes, but it does not erase half a city of steel without leaving scars. Ships capsize, they leave oil slicks, they break apart, they scatter debris. The Cyclops left silence. Theories rushed in. Some blamed her cargo, claiming the heavy ore may have shifted, pulling her under. Others suspected a German U-boat torpedo. But when the war ended, Germany's naval records showed no subs near her course. And then there were the whispers. Her captain, George Worley, born in Germany. Could he have been a spy? Did he betray his own crew? Historians still argue, but evidence never surfaced. The truth remains more haunting. In more than a century since, not a single confirmed piece of the Cyclops has ever been recovered. Not a bolt, not a plate of steel, nothing. Imagine it. The largest collier of her age, a vessel nicknamed the Fuel Giant, swallowed as if the ocean had plucked her from existence. 300 lives, erased so cleanly that even history struggles to believe it happened. If a ship that massive can vanish without leaving a trace, what chance does anything smaller have when it enters the same waters? By the mid-20th century, the Atlantic's scattered tragedies had begun to take on a new shape. Journalists and authors, eager to connect the dots, drew invisible lines from Miami to Bermuda to Puerto Rico. The phrase Bermuda Triangle was born, not out of a sailor's logbook, but out of modern media. In 1950, the Miami Herald published an article noting a cluster of mysterious disappearances in the region. 5 years later, author Vincent Gaddis used the term Bermuda Triangle for the first time in print. By the 1970s, Charles Berlitz had turned it into a global phenomenon with his best-selling book. Overnight, what had once been maritime rumor became a household phrase. But here's what fascinates me as a researcher. The raw material of the legend was not invented. Ships had vanished. Planes had gone silent. Columbus himself had written of strange compass behavior. The difference was how the 20th century reinterpreted those events. Instead of isolated accidents, they became chapters in a single narrative. And then came Hollywood. Movies and television painted the triangle as a supernatural trap. Storms rising from nowhere, ghost ships adrift, pilots flying into clouds and never emerging. Pop culture exaggerated, yes, but it also amplified something deeper. The sense that this patch of ocean was not just dangerous, but cursed. Legends grow best in the gaps between evidence. When Flight 19 left no wreckage, imagination filled the void. When the Cyclops produced no survivors, theories multiplied. Human beings are wired for story, not statistics, and the Bermuda Triangle offered stories in abundance. By the time the Triangle entered films, magazines, even rock songs, it had ceased to be just a region on a map. It had become a symbol, a shorthand for the unknown, a place where the ordinary rules of the world might not apply. The irony, of course, is that while the legend grew larger, the ocean itself stayed silent. It offered no confirmations, no confessions, no explanations, just more disappearances and more questions. And that is how myth takes root, not because of what the ocean gave us, but because of what it refused to return. For centuries, the Bermuda Triangle has been framed as a place where reason fails. But step back, and you'll see that science has been circling these waters, offering explanations that are far less supernatural, and sometimes even more unsettling. Take the compass, for example. Navigators have long known that the Earth's magnetic field is restless, and true north rarely matches magnetic north. In most places, this is a minor inconvenience. But in the triangle, the difference can be sharp enough to rattle even experienced sailors. When Columbus watched his compass needle drift, he may not have witnessed magic, but physics. To him, though, thousands of miles from home, it must have felt like the ocean itself was shifting beneath his feet. Then there is the ocean's hidden engine, the Gulf Stream. A river within the sea, it surges faster than most imagine, sweeping wreckage and lifeboats far from their last reported positions. To rescuers chasing Flight 19, it meant they were searching in waters already emptied, chasing ghosts the current had long carried away. And what of the waves? Mariners once spoke in whispers about towering walls of water, stories dismissed as sailors' exaggerations, until satellites proved them real. Rogue waves, rising 80 or 100 feet, can strike without warning, smashing steel like it were glass. A ship caught broadside wouldn't sink slowly, it would vanish, leaving nothing but silence. Some scientists turn their gaze beneath the seafloor. Methane hydrates, frozen gas trapped in ocean sediments, can erupt, releasing violent bubbles that strip the water of buoyancy. A ship floating one moment can plunge the next. It's a theory with laboratory proof, but the ocean has yet to yield evidence of such an eruption here. Still, the possibility lingers, unsettling in its elegance, and perhaps the most human explanation of all: error, misread instruments, fatigue. A single wrong decision cascading into disaster. Lieutenant Charles Taylor of Flight 19 had a record of losing his bearings. On December 5, 1945, maybe it wasn't the ocean conspiring against him. It was his own fallibility, magnified by circumstance. Each of these theories is convincing in its own way, yet none can silence the legend. Science explains currents, waves, gas, and human mistakes, but it struggles to explain why so often the sea leaves nothing behind. And that silence, the absence of wreckage, the refusal of the ocean to give back its dead, is why the Bermuda Triangle continues to haunt us. Where science offers probabilities, myth thrives on impossibilities. And here, in this corner of the Atlantic, the two collide in ways no equation can fully erase. Science has done its best to chart the triangle, but where facts end, imagination rushes in. And in this part of the Atlantic, imagination has been relentless. Some point beneath the waves to whispers of a lost continent. Atlantis, they say, did not vanish. It sleeps here. Its remnants, advanced beyond our comprehension, may still hum with forgotten energy, warping instruments, bending compasses, pulling ships down into the deep. It is an alluring idea that an ancient civilization continues to reach out from the grave, leaving fingerprints on modern tragedy. Others lift their gaze to the skies. UFO sightings have long clustered over oceans, where human eyes are fewer and explanations harder to pin down. To believers, the Bermuda Triangle is not just a patch of ocean, but a staging ground, an extraterrestrial laboratory where planes disappear not into storms, but into experiments. To skeptics, this is fantasy, but the timing is striking. Just as the legend of the triangle grew, so too did the age of flying saucers. Coincidence or connection? And then there are the stories that sound more like science fiction than maritime lore. Pilots who claim they flew into strange clouds, tunnels of mist that seem to warp time itself. Some reported emerging hundreds of miles off course, their clocks inexplicably out of sync. These accounts are rare, often secondhand, but they persist, passed along because they offer something irresistible. The possibility that the triangle is not just dangerous, but different. Do these theories hold proof? No, but proof is not the currency of legend. Possibility is. And the Bermuda Triangle offers just enough gaps in reason, just enough silence in the record, to keep these possibilities alive. As a researcher, I have learned that people are not drawn to what is explained. They are drawn to what remains unexplained. Atlantis, UFOs, time warps. None of them may be true. Yet all of them live because the ocean itself refuses to close the case. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Not what has been claimed, but what has been left unanswered. Science has traced the edges of this mystery. We know why compasses waver, why storms rise, why steel sometimes fails. Explanations matter. They save lives, and they remind us that most disasters are born of weather, physics, and human error. But if you stand at the water's edge at dusk, reason begins to feel smaller. The sea spreads flat and endless, the sky burns gold, and in the space between them hangs a silence that weighs more than the waves. That silence has consumed entire squadrons and swallowed ships the size of cathedrals, leaving nothing, not even the courtesy of debris. Flight 19 spoke its last words, then vanished. The Cyclops set sail, then ceased to exist. Even in our age of satellites, sonar, and search grids, some vessels still slip into this silence as if the ocean chooses to keep them. And that, I think, is the heart of the legend. Not aliens, not Atlantis, not time warps, but silence itself. Silence so complete that it demands we invent stories to fill it. Silence that humbles our science and unsettles our certainty. As a researcher, I have read every logbook and traced every theory. But standing before the Atlantic, I still feel what sailors once whispered, that there are places where the ocean listens more than it speaks. The Bermuda Triangle may never yield its truth. Perhaps that is its final lesson, that mystery still has a place in a world we think we have mapped, and that sometimes the most haunting sound in all of nature is the sound of nothing at all. The Atlantic keeps its secrets well. Flight 19, the Cyclops, the countless names etched only in logbooks, they all remind us that silence can be louder than evidence. Science explains some of it, the currents, the storms, the flaws of men. But science does not erase the chill you feel when a compass spins or when a signal cuts to nothing. That is why the Bermuda Triangle endures. Not because it is unsolved, but because it is unfinished. Every absence of proof becomes an invitation. For fear, for wonder, for story. And in that way, the triangle is less about ships and planes, and more about us, our need to believe that the world is still stranger than we know. If this journey stirred something in you, curiosity, unease, awe, then walk with me further. This is only one chapter in the Chronicle of Secrets. Beyond the triangle lie ruins buried in deserts, tombs sealed in stone, skies mapped by ancient hands. So, if you wish to keep exploring, subscribe and join this community of seekers. Share what you think, question what you hear, and above all, stay curious. Because the mysteries of the world do not end here. They wait, silent and patient, just beyond the horizon.